Yeah, I'm working 9 to 5, this 9 to 5 don't work for me. I gotta find my way up out, this ain't how it's supposed to be. Feel like I'm settling for less, that's why I gotta leave. They may not understand it, it's not for them to see. Cause it's my vision and it's not yours, no. And you won't get it until reverse rolls around and around. I put my dreams on hold, you told me how that sound. I wish my dreams could pay cause I work for right now. Ain't had nobody yesterday gon' hold me down. While I chase these dreams and know my goals. Chase these dreams and know.
Everybody, this is Let's Vámonos and I'm Desiree. I'm really excited to celebrate International Women's Day today. And I wanted to share a personal story regarding women in my life and what that means to me. So my own grandmother actually was born in Orange, Texas. She was born here, but actually raised in San Luis Potosí. She lived most of her life there, and she also had children there, which was my mom. And in that, she had had a lot of struggles in her life, and she had decided that one day that she was gonna pick up her 3 kids and my mom at the age of 4 and move all the way to Texas to start a new life for herself. And I admire that. She has been a inspiring person in my life that I never got to meet. My middle name is actually Celestina as well, which is her name. And it's something that I really just wanted to share with y'all because International Women's Day is about celebrating women, but it's also about celebrating women who have gone through so much. And so many of us have gone through so much to get to the point that we're at now. And I recognize that as well in my own family and through my own history of having women in my life. So I just wanted to share that story with y'all, and stay tuned because we're going to talk with some wonderful ladies. Let's Vámonos. Bye. Hi everybody, this is Let's Vámonos and I'm your host Desiree. Today is International Women's Day and I'm very excited because I have a wonderful group of ladies here today with us. We have Connie Leon, Shaniese Ruffin, and Mayra Valle, and we are going to talk about women in the workforce, the pay wage gap, and also women in leadership roles as well. And women empowering and women, right? Yes. So we're gonna be talking about a lot of those subjects today. I am looking forward to it. But before we start, I usually start with a fun fact for our guests, but today we're actually gonna talk about a fun fact for women internationally. Okay, so today we are gonna share a fun fact about women's soccer equal pay agreement settlement. The U.S. women's soccer players reached an agreement with the Sports American governing body to end a 6-year legal battle over equal pay, a deal which they are promised $24+ million plus bonuses to match those of the men. So that is an amazing accomplishment that we just recently heard this past month. And so I definitely wanted to share that with y'all if y'all didn't know, because this, to me, for me personally, is the first step of us as women getting the equity of pay for not just women in sports, but women all over, right? So I wanted to share that fun fact with y'all today. So thank y'all so much for coming, ladies. So I gotta tell all the people about all the wonderful things that y'all do, because y'all are literally the most amazing group of women I've ever met. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just saying that. I promise.
We paid you.
Yeah, they paid me. So we have here Connie Leon. Connie graduated from University of Houston in a psychology degree, and she is a creator, she is a community leader, she is a entrepreneur, what else are you, Connie? You're all a mom. She's all the things. She also has her own business called the Creativity Well, so definitely want to check that out. She also works for HCC as a program coordinator running their grant program, EDA grant program, right?
Yep.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I really appreciate it that you're here. We're going to talk about all the good things. We next have Shaniese Ruffin, who has worked in the nonprofit field and also is a current professional in the sales professional in the tech field. And she is a mom of a little girl, right? And she is actually really worked in helping students transition from going to high school to college and helping them with their goals, mentorship. You've also coached track.
Yeah, I've done any kind of job you can think of, I've pretty much done it.
She works out at 7 in the morning.
Yes. So you're also a creative, and you have your own podcast called Discover Your Best Self podcast. So you want to check that out as well. We've got some really great content on there. Our next guest is Mayra Valle. She is a director of learning design at the Emerge Fellowship. You have also had some really great success there, receiving some awards with Equity Core Value Award, the Diversity Core Value Award, graduate from Connecticut College, graduate from Texas A&M, master's degree, but she's also a creative as well, right? We got to, yeah, sometimes. And she just started, she launched her platform, Millennial Abuelita, to showcase handmade embroidery art and to honor her roots and her abuelita. So that's awesome. So thank you, ladies, for coming. So we're going to talk about some really cool issues. This is going to be a candid conversation about women in the workforce, pay wage gap, and also just talking about leadership roles too, women that are in leadership roles and how that has been changing. Right? So like I said earlier, I really felt like the U.S. soccer team really started that first, kind of putting that first step forward for a lot of us. And just them acknowledging that, and acknowledging that, hey, we kind of messed up, right? Is a big deal. Yeah. So as far though as women in the workforce now, we have some struggles with trying to make sure we get paid a fair wage and also get in those leadership roles. So Houston's actually the number 7 on the 2021 list of the gender pay gap for women in the tech force, and they are, which is the 6th smallest in the nation. Women in the industry make here 94 cents for every dollar the male coworker makes. So obviously there's a discrepancy in all of that. So as far as your experiences, what have y'all faced with making sure to negotiate your wage fairly?
I think for me, it's been really important. I've been in oil and gas. I was in oil and gas for a really long time, for about 7 years. And I did a program called Mujeres de Ace, and we did a negotiation class. And I didn't realize until then how much I wasn't advocating for myself. And I think that was like a eye-opening moment for me, that like I took this class. The next day I was like, I'm going into my boss's office and I'm going to ask for promotion. I'm going to ask for, a better pay and this and that. And it worked. Like for me, it was just about like speaking up and like taking advantage of those moments when you're like, I've paid my dues, in the sense of like, I've worked my ass off, for 2-3 years, and I know what everybody does and I know what I'm doing, and I deserve this.
Right.
And so I walked in, like I said, and I asked my boss, I said, hey, I've been here for this many years and I feel like I need maybe, a raise or promotion. And he was like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, oh, it was that easy, right? Yeah. But we don't think about it that way because it's always so hard, right? And you always see it as like a challenge. And sometimes if we just speak up, it's easier than you think it is, right? Of course, it's not like that everywhere, because I've had other experiences where I worked my ass off for a really long time and I never get the recognition or acknowledgement, like you said. That's a big word, is to just be acknowledged and recognized in that space. So it's easier in some spaces more than others.
How about any of y'all experienced some of that negotiation?
Definitely negotiating, especially when I feel like it's really important to negotiate when you first get in. Because what happens is that position gets filled, and then every time someone comes in new to that team, they're able to negotiate their price when they come in. But then you've been there for 3 years or whatever, and then you end up finding out someone else gets paid more than you. But because when they first came in, that's how they were able to to sell themselves. And whatever it is that you're doing, and you are selling yourself and presenting who you are. Like Connie said, I really like, you said that you had to stand up for who you are. You had to really say, look, this is why I'm important. This is why I should get paid this much, because this is what I do. And men are good at doing that. I mean, they are so good at saying, and they're good at, I don't want to say lying, but they can really like position themselves and say, these are the things that I do. And they might not even be experts. Like, we have a really hard time.
They're more assertive.
Yeah, yes. we have a hard time like saying that about ourselves and like taking the credit. Right. And they will take your credit if you don't. So you have to be able to do that and speak what you're good at and why, and how much you cost, and be able to show proof.
Yeah. Knowing your worth from the beginning, which is easier, I think, for men, because for so long women have been placed in this place of like the back burner, right? Like you don't see yourself as, the person who should receive this amount, or you're not as assertive because of how we've been raised and history. So I think that's what makes it hard.
You just said very much resonated with me, Connie, because so when I think about my journey of going into the professional space, for me, I can't talk about it without talking about my parents and their jobs. So I'm a proud first generation Mexican American. daughter of immigrants, and my dad's a landscaper. My mom is a nanny, but she used to be a housekeeper. And my fondest memories, the core memories that I have now is my dad walking through the door at around 10 p.m. with his forest green shirt with white stains on it from sweat, right?
Yeah.
Like, and my mom no longer has fingerprints because of all the chemicals that she's used while cleaning.
Yeah.
So for me, going from that background and being one of the first people in my family to work in an office building felt like such a privilege. So for so long, I was just so happy to be there. I'm like, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm just
Instead
so
of
honored to
knowing
be
that
here.
you're supposed to be there, like
Right.
I work to be here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You earned it.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Yeah.
educated yourself. You did all the things that you
Right.
And your parents sacrificed so much for you.
100%, 100%. And I think that made me less willing to want to negotiate because, again, I was just so grateful to be there that it wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I was like, I learned that Latinas throughout the course of their lives may lose $1.1 to $1.4 million in their 40-year career because of the pay gap, but also because of like lack of negotiation. And for me, I'm like, as a first-gen person who's working, I'm already starting behind.
Right.
I need to catch up, so I need to find that voice and articulate what is my worth, what is my price, and what I'm able to bring to the table. But it was really hard.
No.
It was really hard.
So actually doing some research on my own, trying to also find a little bit of the background of why there's these barriers, right? So some of the barriers are like institutional barriers, individual mindsets, which is kind of like I think you just mentioned, and then lifestyle choices. And for me personally, as a mom, the lifestyle choices really resonates with me because, you know, I went from working a 9 to 5 to really realizing that I was missing out on a lot of my kids' stuff. And in the beginning, I was working, not even thinking about that. And now I've realized as they've gotten older, they need me more now than they did then. And so having also that ability to negotiate, not just your pay, but just to negotiate, okay, how is my workflow going to look like as well? All of those other things that come with that. Like, can I work from home a day or two? If I get pregnant, like, what is that going to look like? Or, you know, all of those things or if I have postpartum, what is that going to look like? And so those are some things too that I've realized that us women, we don't have those negotiating skills, and we really should be able to have an open conversation to the people that are our leaders or the people that are guiding us to hopefully be successful. And speaking of leaders, women in the leadership roles as well. So statistically, there's not that many women, specifically also women of color, in leadership roles. So how do we kind of send that message across to tell people, hey, having a woman of color is of a benefit, right? Not just thinking that we're the workhorse, we're the worker bee, we're the person that's always multitasking, doing all the things. You like to say, oh.
Well, yes. Yeah, I think women, we do so much all the time that for so many people I know, they're natural multitaskers because we've had to do it for so long that translating that into, actually, this isn't in my job description. How do we renegotiate that original contract? Because I signed up to do this set of skills and now you're actually using all of these other things that I also bring to the table, but without compensation, that's not fair to me, right? And I think it goes back to that idea that Connie was talking about of just how do we find a way to articulate those things? And for so many of us, at least for me, it was about breaking those generational curses, right? Like we haven't engaged in these spaces. We haven't been welcomed into these spaces, if we're being fully honest, that how do we make those spaces welcoming for other people who look like us? And I think that's the hard part. I think for me, how do I build trust with people, and specifically women who may be first generation as well, Latinas or women of color, so that they feel affirmed in that space and feel ownership within the roles I give them, and treat them as peers and collaborators constantly because they have tons to say and I want to listen. You know?
I think I totally agree on that, because when you are being asked to do all these things and then you're not getting paid for it, but to also, you know, put yourself in a position of leadership, right? So when you come into a new job, I think that you should already have clarity on what it is that you want to do and where you want to be. Not necessarily saying like, okay, I know exactly which job I'm going to go to next, but I'm going to take a role of leadership, a role of authority. I'm going to take ownership over some things, and I may not get paid for some of those things because it might be a little bit out of my scope, but maybe having that conversation with your manager, like I had one, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to put in position some training, and I'd like to lead these type of things. And he's like, yeah, I think that'd be awesome because I see you as a leader. But if I would have never said that, would he have told me that?
Right.
You see what I mean? Like, maybe you saw me as a leader, but now that this might have confirmed some things for you. So now I'm positioning myself to be able to possibly get a different type of promotion or do something else that I want to do. But it's not just us who struggle as women. I think men of color is too. I know this is about women, but I'm just saying, like, I've heard other men in power who their white counterparts, they're being asked to do all of these things, and their counterparts aren't either. So I just think it's a struggle for all of us when we're there to say, okay, hey, how do I have this conversation, but also not get retaliation for it?
Yeah.
And it also has a lot to do with the mindset, right? Like, of the employer, right? Of the employer, and then of yourself. I've had employers in the past that I know coming in that I'm like, it's not going to be easy for me to put myself in that position necessarily, but I'm still going to try, right? I'm still going to work hard. I'm going to show them like my value and my worth, and show them like what I do bring to the table. But if that other person, your employer, your boss, isn't in the same mindset or openness, it's going to be hard regardless. I know from my current job, my boss is very much open-minded in that sense, where it's taken me this long to find that boss and to find that culture, but I'm also already in that mindset myself of, I'm going to be a director. I want to do these things, right? I already have that plan in place, which is not everybody, right? It takes, I've been working for over 25 years, so I have that mentality already of like, I want to be in this specific seat, in this specific leadership role, and I know what I'm going to do to get there. But if the other person isn't there with you, it's going to make it really hard, right? It's going to be a challenge that probably isn't there for your white counterpart.
Right, so, and that comes to the next question of when you got to go, okay, see you later, on to the next, right? And we tend to sometimes get scared, right? We're like, oh, well, we want it to work, right? We're going to try to force this situation, but there's going to be times where it's just, they're never going to, they're never going to understand.
It's so frustrating when you can't, you're trying to express, hey, this is what I'm doing. You've shown, your capacity, and then people completely ignore it, and so I just was in that situation where I left the organization where I was their top, salesperson, and then I ended up leaving, and they just didn't understand why I left. Well, I've already told you what I want to do, and I've been here, and and it hasn't happened, and in my mind, it's not going to happen, because you're not. I've already seen, like, Maya Angelou says, when somebody shows you who they are, to believe them. You're not going to do it. So at this point, I have to leave. So I left and went to another company. I ended up getting fired less than 60 days in. I hadn't even finished training.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if it was because of who I am, but I have a strong feeling of that because it was told to me so many times by another coworker. And
as far as like your ethnicity? Yes. Oh, wow.
Which was crazy to me because it was a video interview. Like, you saw who I didn't change. I was still black when I got there. Like, that's who I am. I don't know. It was a filter. Yeah. I was like, I don't know what you thought was going to happen, but this is still me. And so I ended up finding out, the company was like 99%, white males. And not only that, it was hard because everything was onboarded virtually. So I never got to see anyone in person. I never felt what, and when you're at a company, I think it's really different now because we're virtual. When everything is work from home, you don't know what that feeling is, but I felt it when I got fired. And so then it took me a while to find a new job, and I ended up taking a lower pay because the position. Right? But I'm in a new industry as well. And I'm still getting paid more than my counterparts just because of my experience. But I told myself, I said, you know what? Like your point, I'm a mother. I want to, have time because I can't work these weekends and things. I have to have a life where I can be there for my child, take her to school, go to track, all these things, and I'm gonna have to pivot and then grow in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to also kind of transition a little bit to something that me and Shaniese talked about regarding training from women, being trained by a woman versus being trained by a man, and the workforce, and what that looks like in the development of your career. So me personally, I had some training by a white male, and it didn't go too well.
that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And you know, to each their own. He did the best he knew how, right? And but I also had to take that experience and realize, okay, I'm never going to learn with what in the position I was in. But I also shared that my husband was trained by a Latina, and you know, I give my husband some credit. I do give him some, but I do tell him, hey, she set you up for success. She created that foundation for you. He's been working for his company for over 11 years. Like, let's talk a little bit about women in those roles, and why do you think like women tend to be kind of a little bit more, I guess, successful in those training development roles?
I think it's because of like the empathy, or like, you know, the sympathy towards other women, and it could go both ways, right? For me, I know that sometimes, like, because you're the only woman in a space, you tend to be a little bit harder on people, right? Because you're trying to keep that position and you're trying to stay in your role. But at the same time, for myself, especially if it's a young woman of color, like, I'm always more empathetic towards them of like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to, you know, create this space and this culture and build each other up, because it's needed. But I think because of that, because our heart is in a different place, especially if you've been treated a certain way in the workplace your whole life, then you don't want other people to feel that way, right? So I think for us, it's a little bit easier than men to kind of feel that kind of sympathy of like, or even sometimes like, you're being too nice, but not, right? Because you already know your role and you know how you can help and build people up. Right. It's sometimes easier to build people up when you're nice versus when you're trying to pound them into the ground every time. So I think that's what it is for me.
And funny enough, Connie and I have worked together through another fellowship. Yes. So all of what you said deeply resonated, because I've seen her do that in action, actually. And I think that was spot on. With the women that I've been able to work with, I completely sense a difference. I think there's a level of transparency that comes with empathy, where it's like, I know that this job isn't going to be there forever and you're going to move on. What do you want to do? And how can I best support you in making sure those things happen? So do you want to work, you know, to become a better spokesperson, to become a more motivational influencer to your students? Are you trying to connect more with the community? Like getting to your personal why, and then making sure that every meeting after that connects with that personal why of yours, which I feel like for me, every woman that I've worked with, I've been so lucky because we've remained friends. Because I felt like there was an investment in me as a person, and there was a level of trust that was built too. And I feel like for me, once I'm able to trust you and you trust me, I'm able to be my most creative self. And I think creating that space for people to do that is so key. So I'm not surprised that your husband was able to like maximize their potential with somebody who had cultivated that space for them to do that.
And it's a setting people up for success kind of thing, right? Because there is spaces that I've been in where I'm like, I was totally set up to fail. Like there was no support. They knew that, you know, if they didn't back me up on these things, they weren't gonna go the way I needed them to go, and then I was gonna give up. So I think that's very key, is to setting each other up for success, because I mean, who doesn't want their company to succeed, or you know, you to be recognized for doing good things,
or their employers to grow as well, so because that reflects on usually the person that's behind that. Anything to add?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, you know, if we're talking about gender roles, we are house managers, right? We facilitate everything that happens. And so I just feel like, you know, that's not something to take lightly. We are facilitating a whole masterpiece here. All the kids are everywhere. We're cooking dinner. We're making sure the house is clean. We're doing all these things and making sure that it is managed properly, running the schedule. Hey, who has what when, who has to go pick up whoever. Like, we're already doing this every day, all day. So please, don't.
It's easy to make that transition into the
like I can do this today over here at work and get paid. Like, it's not that hard.
One of the things that I took from you regarding building that trust and building that community is women empowering women as well within that. So definitely want to talk about that. Women empowering women movement has been going on for a while. It's been, I feel like it's still on this like rise, and thoughts about like, are we doing the best that we can do, and like, is there more that we can do? Like, what is the next step? Because like I said, with the women's soccer having that success for themselves, okay, that's great. They're soccer players, they're athletes, right? But there's also women that are just normal, everyday women, us that are working in our careers in different ways. So like, is there like more, I guess the question more is like, as far as women empowering women, is there what else do we need to do, I guess?
I think for me, the biggest thing has always been not seeing people as competition, right? And I've worked with everybody here in different capacities, and I'm never one to say, I'm not going to let you connect with Desiree because she's my connection. I hate that mentality. Like, I get it. You know, sometimes the spaces feel so small that you feel like you have to protect certain things. But I think getting out of that mindset, getting out of your own head and knowing that opportunities are for everybody, regardless of how big or how small, you need to make those connections and just kind of grow from it, because it's really hard when you don't. You really enclose yourself into a space where people can see it and know that you don't want to work outside of the box and you know, help others. So I think for me, that's been really key, is like my mindset of like not ever seeing anybody as competition, knowing that there's enough for everybody in the space, and
working in abundance.
Yeah, and just moving around, right? Like not letting that stop me from anything. So
Yeah, I think people pick and choose.
Yeah.
Who, you know, they're like, oh, I'm women empowerment, I help people, but you choose, which is fine. You can choose whatever you want to do.
Right.
You know, you choose the type of person or the status of the person or whatever it is to, you know, help them or whatever. Like if somebody asks me a question and call me, you know, I'm gonna do my best to help them where I can, right? And if I can't, then I'm honest, like, hey, you know what, this is what I can do, this is what I can't, whatever. And I think people have a hard time being honest. They can't tell, they won't say, like I've had so many people say, oh girl, call me, right? Or let's work together, let's do this and third. And it's at an event in front of people.
Right.
So did you do that to sound important or to sound whatever, like you're doing
then
something?
it never comes to fruition, and then you're like,
Because I'm the person that calls you.
yeah.
Right.
So
I'm gonna call you right now.
like, please don't tell me to call you, because I mean, we're in sales. Like, you just told me to call you. I'm trying to close the deal. What are we doing? Like, I literally have an agenda. This is what I want to do, and I want to talk to you about it. And you told me to call you, and then you don't answer, or when you see me, you act like you don't know who I am, or whatever it is. I that's what I can't deal with.
Yeah.
And so, if you're gonna really be a woman in position who wants to help people, either help them or just be honest and say what you can or can't do, or don't promote it like you do.
Yes.
I think a lot of that comes from like for our space, in the blogger space, influencer space, people get burned sometimes, right? Like I've had it happen to me so many times where I help someone and then they, you know, go in a different direction and just kind of use my name and put me in a not so good position. So then I kind of think about like the next time I share information, but at the same time, I don't, right? Because I'm still going to be who I am. I'm going to share what I need to share, and people are going to do with it what they want.
Right.
So I think a lot of times women feel guarded in that sense, which we shouldn't, but it happens, right? And it's not a good feeling. So I totally get that. Like people saying, call me, and then you call them and it's like, oh, let me think about it, right?
I think both of you bring up such a beautiful point. It sounds like when there isn't reciprocity or in exchange, that's the issue.
Right.
Like if we are
Or the
truly-
same kind of mutual reciprocity, right?
Right.
Reciprocity. You did it better than me.
no, but like if you're somebody that that I'm working alongside of, there's something I can learn from you, and there's something you can learn from me, and there's an exchange. I think there's moments where sometimes it feels like someone's giving a lot and not receiving very much, and I think in that way the relationship may feel like we're not building trust. Are we on the same page? Are you interested in growing with me or growing over me? That I think as much clarity as we can build, the better. And again, not gatekeeping the resources we have, right? How do we share as many resources? And I think, at least for me, coming from like a Mexican American community, it is about the community. So it's like, in Connie giving me some support, it doesn't mean that, you know,
that it's taking anything from me.
Right, exactly. It's an exchange, and it means that at this moment in time, I'm able to impart things that Connie has helped me with onto other people.
Right.
We believe in, I think, the ripple effect, but I think there is very much a sense of competition in some places that I actively have to work against. Like, I'm not against this individual.
Right.
I want all of us to thrive, so how can we do that?
That's kind of like
Something I've learned for myself is just realizing, okay, not everybody's gonna like you, and not everybody's gonna be on your side.
Right.
That's okay, but there's plenty of spaces that will and that are open to that, and so I think the women empowerment movement is still growing. I really believe. I think y'all hit it on the head as far as like where we need to go with that and the mindset we need to have with that, because I was a little concerned when they did talk about the settlement that people were going to be like, oh, we're good now, everybody's good, everything can just go back to normal or whatever, you know, go about their daily business. But that's just one fight. That is just one fight in the whole scheme of things.
Right.
And so I really want to make sure we kind of express that to people out there that could be watching and saying, oh yeah, it's just one fight, because some people,
it's only one level.
Exactly.
They could grow from that same, 24 million, they could go double that. So
Yeah.
it's just one level of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So I really appreciate all of y'all chatting with me and having a really open, candid conversation. Any last words for some women that are going into the workforce, coming from going to college, going right into the workforce? Some maybe motivational tips or just things that, hey, you got this.
Be yourself.
Oh, there you go.
Be you, and don't be scared to ask. And if people try to make you feel a certain type of way about it, that's their problem.
Yeah.
It's totally their issue.
It's definitely something that people have their different lenses on, right? And so if they've never sat in our seats or, walked in our shoes, then they don't know what it's about. I am getting slammed on TikTok because I made a comment about how
yes.
how as Latina women we're looked at as like bitches, right, for putting our foot down and being assertive. And some people are
Black women too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, but people are saying, oh, it's just you, like it's you, you're not working hard enough, or you're not doing this enough, or it's you. And I'm like, no, it's not just me. Like, it happens. The fact that you can't see it or you can't recognize it is not my fault, right? That's on you. But the other thing is that I'm not saying it happens in every space, but it happens so much that it has to be recognized that we are not seen in a certain light because, we're trying to put our foot down or be assertive because of like history and how things have settled, so that for me is like, put your foot down.
Because when a man
regardless.
says something, it's almost like with your kids,
It's a
right?
given.
Yeah, it's like when, okay, wait till your dad gets home,
Yeah.
right? And so then when he gets home, he says something one time, and then the kid straightens
it's
up,
done.
right? And then you're like, I just said this literally 20 times, but then if I say it in a more stern voice or whatever it is, or when I say that's it and then I take away something, then all of a sudden I'm the bad person.
Yeah,
but
That's
you
exactly. My
yeah.
dad would be like, you're being so mean. Yeah. I'm like, why are you yelling, Mom? I'm like, because I already told you calmly.
Yeah.
And now I have to yell.
This is step 2.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing of like, that's my point of, putting my foot down and being seen in a certain light. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I need to get my word across and I need to be who I am and make sure that I get what I deserve. So
Yeah.
especially in the workplace.
Myra, any
lovely.
last words of advice?
Yeah, I mean, and this is something I love working with young people because I feel like I'm talking to a younger version of myself.
Yeah.
And
You
some
are
students.
still really young.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
She is the youngest of the group. She is the youngest.
But some of my students, once they get into college, they'll say, Miss, can you believe that I got in? Like, I'm so lucky. And I'm like, no, they are so lucky that you chose to go there.
Yes.
Like, and I think for me, just imparting that to young professionals as well, that they are so lucky to have you. You are so worthy of being in those spaces. And if you don't hear it enough, like, I hope that you have felt that way today, because so many people are so worthy. And I think we get such different messaging out in the world for so many different reasons, that just knowing our worth, knowing that we're worthy is so important.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. I really appreciate y'all. I'm so excited to celebrate International Women's Day. So we are celebrating, and to also continue this celebration with us, we would like to thank our sponsors, Quick Snap Events, who will be doing a virtual photo booth that you can click on the link, and we'll be sharing that as well. So you can participate and celebrate International Women's Day as well. We also like to thank our sponsors, Cargo Vintage Ladies, and also Segundo Coffee Lab, and also JP Leather. So thank y'all so much. And oh, one last thing I almost forgot. Tell us where we can connect with y'all.
So my personal page is Soy Connie Leon, in Spanish, S-O-Y, Connie Leon. And the Creativity Well is my other page.
Okay.
And I'm Discover Your Best Self. You can find me on Instagram at Discover Your Best Self.
So my personal page is the Mayra Valle, and my creative artistic platform can be found at Millennial Abuelita.
Awesome. Yeah, I almost forgot about that. But thank y'all so much. And as always, guys, let's vámonos. Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. Thank you to our sponsors for all the love and support.